As Apostle just mentioned, I've been working with this for almost a decade now, and I'm here to share some of this experience. GREEN4SEA made it easy for me. They asked us specific questions, which made the discussion actually quite interesting. I started with putting some points on the policy developments. And as Peter mentioned, at the MEPC, we have a new G8 guidelines. The new G8, and that's pretty important to keep up with you, is that new systems or systems at some point, all systems after 2018 that will get new type approvals must be using the new G8. They should be using it already now, but as of October 2018, they must use the new guidelines. After 2020, ships are not allowed to install systems type approved according to the old guidelines. So after 2020, everyone must start installing new system called new systems. That does not mean that if you have installed a system based on the already old guideline, you have to change it to the new one. You don't. If you install the system today, you can keep it until the ship is scrapped or until whatever you want. But if you install a system after 2020, it must be type approved according to the revised guidelines. That's important when you are discussing with your manufacturers. We also made the G8 as a mandatory code. I'm not sure that will help a lot, but at least that's what we did. The dates we talked about, and then it is more or less more descriptive, the new guidelines. Is it getting better? I'm not sure. It's the same people using it. So if the people are using it are not doing a good job, if that was the problem, we surely did not fix that at this point. But the guidelines itself became a little bit better, I think. Looking at the implementation dates that Peter just talked about, realistically speaking, we have the original guideline, the original B3 regulation of the convention. It mentions you have almost 5 years from 2016. The assembly resolution that was agreed a couple of years ago says from the entry into force and 5 years onward. The new proposal that the industry came up with suddenly in the last MEPC gives it 2019, 2024. And if you look at all this discussions and postponement and all these problems, we're talking about plus or minus 2 years. So it's important that we don't get lost in this. Everything will be postponed, it will be cancelled. Like Peter has said, as of 8th of September next year, you have to do something with your ballast water, regardless, either exchange or treatment. And then those are the dates out there, 2017 or 2024. You have this span, regardless of what MEPC decides. And MEPC is meeting on July 3rd. It's from the 3rd to the 7th of July. The question is, of course, whether MEPC in July is able to decide anything, because eventually it is the next MEPC, which will be in March 2018, that will be actually changing the convention. So if MEPC in July cannot decide on any of those timelines, then we just have to wait until the proposed changes to the actual text of the convention, which cannot come before 2018. And then we will know. And that's the crazy part about all this, is that we will have a convention implemented before agreeing on when to implement it. And so it will be quite chaotic. Other important issues, the experience building phase, very important. And it's very important to remember this. Port state controllers cannot detain or stop ships based only on sampling. This is an agreement made at the IMO that sampling is okay. They want a sample, that's fine. They cannot grab samples, so they can't just open the ballast tank and take a cup. That's not okay. Very clear in the guidelines from the IMO. It's also very clear that they cannot do anything unless it's clear that the captain did not use, or the chief mate or whoever did not use the equipment, or the equipment is not working. Then they can take samples and take detention reactions. But if the system is working, everything's fine, and then they take a sample and they see that the water is not clean, they cannot detain the ship. And the reason for this is that we want them to take samples so that we understand first how systems are working, Second, if we are at all able to take samples and find anything useful out of it, because we're not even sure we are able to take samples from ships and test them. We don't know that. Moving on, with the Coast Guard, we have type approval. It's important to remember that we do not have some details on the type approval are missing. Important to ask manufacturers on those details, UV transmittance, holding time, and so on. There are some issues with scaling of systems. That's what's delaying the other systems. We expect around 10 systems to be type approved in 2017. I know that for a fact. I'm working with most of them, trying to get the type approvals already submitted very soon. The type approval program of the Coast Guard is as chaotic as the IMO type approval program. There are a lot of interpretations. There's a lot of different applications, and so it's always a question, if you test one equipment in this test facility, will it pass the tests at another test facility? And that's not always probably the case also under the Coast Guard. Extensions are getting a bit more difficult. You need to explain why you cannot install the equipment that is already type approved. And it will be more and more difficult the more and more equipment getting US Coast Guard type approvals are installed, are being released. So you have to actually tell the Coast Guard, I cannot buy this system, I cannot install it because why? You have to tell them something reasonable. It's too early, it doesn't fit for my ship, and you can't just say it doesn't fit on my ship. You have to tell them why does it not fit on your ship. And it has to be a good reason. Finally, we have a new VGP from the EPA coming out. It will be active as of December 2018. And it will be released in 2017 for commentary. So we will have a new VGP next year as well that we can look at, and it will be enforced as of 2018. So there's a lot of regulations coming up in the next year or two. Peter talked about ballast plans, certificates. How many have international ballast water management certificates on their ships? Can you raise your hands? The certificate itself, not the plan, not one. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Go to class this afternoon, get the surveyors on board, and get your certificates on your ships. We have 50,000 certificates that must be out by 8th of September. There's nothing to wait for. Nothing. Call class, and I'm going to get back to class, that they're not doing their job. But you have to get your certificates already today, for exchange at least. There's nothing to wait for. No one is going to postpone any convention. There's impossible legally for anyone anywhere, even Donald Trump, to postpone the convention. It cannot be made. So you have to comply by 8th of September. Let's do it. You have to. We will see if we will have enough systems approved in good numbers. This is a major challenge. Realistically, how many choices do you really have? Not the 80 systems out there, because if there are 80, realistically, you probably have 20, maybe 10. You need to know your options. What are your options? Lead time for delivery of equipment, we are seeing 8 months already today for some equipment to be delivered in shipyards in Europe. You'll get to maybe 2 months less if it's in China or Korea. Those are important to take into consideration when you are planning your retrofits. Do some work to try to limit your choices to a couple, and then start talking to those manufacturers and make a plan. It doesn't cost anything to make a plan on how you want to comply with the convention. As I mentioned, the dates are there, that between next year and 2024, you have to fit your ship with something, so it's good to just start planning on this, budget-wise and everything else. Installation, we do a lot of commissioning on installations of board ships. Few of them, almost none, were done correctly at the installation phase, and so we cannot expect the equipment to work when we start using it. Focus on commissioning. This 3D scanning and whatnot is very nice, very good. It's a fancy camera. But focus on making sure that when the installation is done, everything is working. Put some efforts on the commissioning, then at least you will know that your equipment is working. You're paying a lot of money for it. Port state control, there's a big deficiency in how port state controls are going to cope with all of this. Do they know what they are doing? There's a huge need for that. Grabbing of samples. It's important to spread the word out to everyone else. They cannot open the ballast tank, take a sample, and detain your ship. It's not allowed by the circular from the IMO. It's very important. Again, detention based on sampling solely is not allowed. It has to be combined with a system not working. Like I just talked about, the implementation of the convention for the stakeholders, try to share data. We don't know if the equipment are working or not. We have actually no idea. We don't get any feedback. On the regulators, I hope we will get more. I don't see many regulators here, but so let's skip that. Class societies, and this is what I was just talking about, class societies need to step up. They need to start telling their surveyors what to do. They need to start pushing ship owners to get their certificates on board. It's not acceptable that only one hand is risen among all the ship owners here with international ballast water management certificates. We have to get this moving, and we have to start as soon as possible. There is a big challenge with shipyards. I don't see shipyards in China where most of you will dock their ships ready for this. And so you should expect a lot of quality issues to start with. And hopefully within time it will get better with the design, with the installation, with everything else. Finally, a quick wish list. I hope that we will get a smooth implementation. I know we will not get it. I'm used to many conventions entering into force, and then 2 weeks early before the D-Day, we start running to get everything in place, and then ships will be without proper papers to trade, because you will not be allowed to trade without the certificates. Do proper commissioning. I hope that you will leave this room with the idea that commissioning of the equipment is extremely important. Don't leave it for the 5 minutes, check and move on, but actually do proper commissioning. Feedback. And for the IMO to give some more port state control training and make more and more unified interpretations when we get more feedback from ship owners, how equipment are working and how the ships are being operated. Thank you.
Thank you, John.